So, you pulled a Chrome Rare Endeavor and you didn't tell me. That's okay. I'll forgive you. But now, you've come to me begging for my help. You don't know how to play it. You have no idea what you're doing. Well, that's okay. I'm feeling generous. So I'll teach you. I'm Willie T, and welcome to my Endeavor 3 deck profile. Well, let's go ahead and get started with the man himself. Endeavor 3. Wait a minute. Something's not quite right here. Let's just try this. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Doesn't feel quite right yet, though, does it? Well, let's just upgrade again. There we go. Endeavor 3 is a 6-hand size, 31 health character with the Earth, Fire, and Order symbols. He has an enhance on his attack to mill 4 as a cost. His attack will get +2 speed, and if you cycled this game, he'll get +3 damage as well, which is huge. You really want to cycle with this guy in order to make the most of him. So with that in mind, we're going to be playing a pretty thin deck despite our desire to cycle. It's a bit of a risky strategy, but it works out most of the time. The other part that we're going to be playing into with that is his form. It is once per game. He can add 1 attack from his removed from game pile to his hand, and this ability cannot be canceled. This is extremely important to how we want to play this deck, and we're really going to be able to weaponize it in the mid game and really push our rival to their limits on what they can and cannot block. And spoiler alert, they're not going to be blocking much. But let's see what they have to deal with as we go here. Well, let's go ahead and start with our attack lineup. Our attack lineup's how we're going to get our rival to 0 anyway, so let's see what we can do to push them to their boiling point. The first thing I want to start with is 4 copies of Nitro Explosion Ignition. This card is phenomenal in our character because it's already high speed, meaning we're generally going to be able to push it through early on as an opener to get something going, but it also has a really important enhance. In the card pool, it can remove itself in order to give your attack powerful 2. This does 2 things for us. This gives us a momentum out because we want our attacks in our discard pile in most cases so that we're able to put them back when we cycle. But additionally, we're able to use this to remove itself from the card pool where it's safe for us to grab again with our once per game. It's one of our viable targets for that. It's not generally the best, but there are definitely some lines where I have wanted to grab this from the remove from game pile after playing an attack, immediately removing this, and then immediately pick it back up as soon as that attack resolves so I can just play it again. It's very nasty to just be able to put that additional pressure while ignoring the progressive. The other benefit to this card is its card pool response. After a Fury attack leaves your card pool during the combat phase, you add the top card of your deck to your momentum. We're able to use our momentum for powerful on many of the cards in this deck, but we're also able to use it for capture evildoers later on in order to facilitate bigger plays and longer strings. This card's really fantastic. It really facilitates what we want to do in this deck, which is put pressure on our rival and alleviate pressure from ourselves by clearing that progressive difficulty. This card's very vital to that strategy, and it's a big part of what we're trying to do. The next card that I want to talk about is 4 copies of Stun Grenade. This is another card that really takes advantage of our ability to remove things from our progressive. This time, by committing our rival's resources, we're able to increase our stun rating by the amount of attacks we have discarded or removed from the card pool in order to push that envelope even further. The other element that this attack adds to our lineup is its ability to synergize with our full Fury attack package, mill 3 and add 1 of our Fury attacks from those 3 to our hand. It also gives us an additional 3 cards that we get rid of during this attack to get us closer and closer to that cycle and really push that burning point for our deck. This card is fantastic. It synergizes really well with Nitro Explosion Ignition, and it just synergizes really well with our character. This is going to be a mainstay of Fire Fury decks for a long time to come. I don't expect this card to go anywhere in this deck. Speaking of other Fire Furies, let's continue with 4 copies of Hellspider. Hellspider is another card that we're able to play that mills us further, gets us closer to that boiling point for Endeavor to get that extra damage online, cycle ourselves, and just really go ham on our rival. The other thing that it does is it gives speed to all of the rest of our attacks for the entire rest of the turn. And if we cycled, it adds damage as well. It's a very welcome addition to the Fire Fury package, and it's able to really push us into the stratosphere with what we can do. All 3 of these attacks are viable openers so far. There's no bad combination of attacks that we want to play. We just want to jam orange cards into our card pool and really put the pressure on our rival, see what they can do in order to stop anything, if anything. We're able to put so many stats, it becomes so taxing to block that early on in the game, we're very likely to get some damage through just for free based on the stats that we're able to give on our face and with the cards that we're playing. Next up is another Jet Burn card with 2 copies of Plus Ultra Prominence Burn. This card is really cool as an opener or as a finisher for our deck, because every time that we mill, we can play that response on the top that forces our rival to commit a foundation. And we're able to do that up to 3 times during the attack. There are so many cards in our deck that mill: Hellspider, Stun Grenade, Revel at his Masterpiece, Our Face. We're able to do so many things with this to really commit our rival out, and it is a prime target to pick up with our once per game after we've cycled in order to use its first enhance to double our damage. This card becomes absolutely wacky once you're able to just put stats on it, float things from Hellspider, and really put the pressure and give them a real big haymaker at the end that they have to deal with or they will lose. This card is phenomenal. I don't want to see more than one of it at any given time. It's very good to put that pressure on. It's a good opener, it's a good closer, but I don't want to be flooded with it. It's a 5 difficulty move, and this deck really thrives on playing as many 4 difficulty moves as it can, which makes the next card a little bit of an exception to that. To round out our attack lineup, we have 3 copies of Fiery Vengeance. Fiery Vengeance is a 5 difficulty, 5 mid for 5, so it's relatively well statted, but it also has a really incredible response on its face. Multiple of them, in fact. The first response is that you can lose 2 health, and after this attack was completely blocked after it resolves, you can lose 2 life to remove it from the game and force your rival to lose 2 life. Very important for us to be able to remove it from progressive, and it still stays banked for us to use our once per game on if we need to. The other element of this card that really is very cool for us is its synergy with momentum. We're able to, whenever we mill an attack, we can discard a momentum to pick up that attack and add it to our hand. This is like a 5th, 6th, and 7th copy of Stun Grenade in many cases. It just has a momentum cost instead of a mill cost. Very strong for us, and we're able to really take advantage of every piece of this card. It is tailor-made for Endeavor 3, and it is going to put the pressure on our rival. Before we move on to the foundations, I do want to go over a couple of other important pieces that really help us facilitate this deck. The first is 1 copy of Pro Hero Rankings. This card's a nice one-of. It has Pro Hero Breaker, which is important because our character has the Pro Hero trait, but it also allows us to mitigate the damage that is dealt to our deck by cycling. We're able to take up to 5 attacks that we cycle and put them back into our deck. I've had many games with this deck where I've cycled multiple times. Being able to put back multiple attacks multiple times really helps you with the longevity of this deck, but it's not a necessity. If you don't see it, that's generally okay. And the last tech piece that I want to talk about before we go to the foundations is 3 copies of Capture Evildoers. This card is able to clear our card pool as well as steal momentum from our rival. It is a mainstay of the all fire and good symbols thus far in the game, and so long as it remains in our set rotation, it is going to remain that way. This card is very, very strong, and it's able to facilitate some very strong plays from us. We're able to really take advantage of it in this character with our ability to remove things from our progressive on our own. So we're able to play several attacks before playing the Capture Evildoers to clear our card pool and then continue the onslaught. It really can take a 3-4 attack turn and turn it into a 7 or 8 attack turn, and it becomes very frightening with all the words that we have available on our character card. Well, we talked about all the attacks and all the other cool cards that help us get there, but let's talk about the foundations. These are equally important to our game plan, and it's good to talk about what we have available both offensively and defensively. So let's start with a singular copy of the new number 1. A signature card for Endeavor. It cannot be sealed by our rivals' effects, and we're able to unseal our own cards, but that's not even the important part of this card. It is able to commit to reset the speed of an attack, ours or our rivals, and give it +1 or -1 speed based on our choice. Very, very important to have a repeatable reset in this game because it's able to answer so many problems. This card is incredible. I expect to see it as a 1-of in pretty much every deck on these symbols. The next card is going to be 2 copies of Defrosting. Defrosting combos really well with some of the other cards in our deck, but it also has a mill cost. Mill costs are very important to us. We want to use those in order to accelerate our game plan, get ourselves further into that cycle, and push the envelope of what we can do and really make our opponents squirm. Following that up, we have 3 copies of Rebel at his Masterpiece. This is another card that's really important to us for its mill cost alone, but getting extra damage when we are already pumping speed is a very good way to even out our damage output and make sure that we're keeping that pressure on no matter what stage of the game we're in. The other cool factor of this card is its Endeavor/Todoroki form. It's very easy to get below 10 cards in this deck, not once, but twice during the course of a turn, and being able to remove this foundation in order to draw 2 cards, become an 8 or 10-hander for the turn is absolutely monumental in our ability to push things through and make our opponent bleed. Next, we have 3 copies of Heroic Lineage. This is one of our primary defensive pieces because this is able to respond to any damage increase ability in order to give -3 speed, and it synergizes directly with Defrosting. Defrosting being able to give additional damage and -1 speed can turn a Heroic Lineage into a -4 speed on one of our rivals' moves, and that can take a move from being lethal to being very, very blockable. So this card is really important in that fact. The other thing we can use it for is offensively, to get a little bit of extra damage. We have speed increase on our character card, so a damage increase that responds to our speed increase is very likely to get a little bit of extra damage in there on our rival. To follow that up, we have 2 copies of Frozen. Frozen is very, very cool with some other pieces in our deck that we're able to do. We're able to flip a lot of cards and utilize things. Once a foundation is committed, we no longer care about it. Being able to weaponize that with Frozen is going to be a way that we can really push things through and make sure our rival stops blocking us. Because the more they block, the less damage they take. And we just want them to take damage. We want them to go to 0 as fast as we possibly can. And taking away all their foundations is a great way to do it. To follow up, that is a card that synergizes with this, and that is 4 copies of Lust for Battle. This also synergizes incredibly well with our character, since we mill cards on our face. As soon as one of these hits the discard pile, we can remove it to take a -1 on our rival's next check. It doesn't cause the end of the combat phase, but using this offensively or sometimes defensively, if we have the ability to mill and we get a little bit lucky, can really push the envelope on what we're able to do. taken a few cues from the loot box Tokoyami in order to put this in and really make sure that nothing we do gets blocked. It's so hard to fight through one of these on a turn, plus all the speed. It's impossible to fight through 2 or 3. And sometimes we have to just watch our rival purposely fail a block in order to get rid of those check hacking abilities that we have for Lust for Battle, and it really pushes things in our favor in order to do so. Next card in our foundation lineup is 4 copies of Ice Gliding. Ice Gliding is one of our premier pieces of speed reduction, but it also functions to give us additional speed if we need it. If we can foresee our rival blocking several things, but they're having to do half blocks or something like that, Ice Gliding comes in extra handy because it's able to represent 2 speed across 2 moves. Really useful card, plus it has a commit cost, making it synergize with Frozen very, very well, being able to commit for speed, blow it up for our rival to commit 1, really can push the envelope and make sure that we're getting things through. To round out our ones, we've got 2 copies of Forcing Surrender. Forcing Surrender is in here primarily because it has a low block, but it also does function very well in case we need to eat up Breaker with something that we didn't necessarily want to have to play so early. I have spent many times getting breakered or barrier shielded, and then I have to play a foundation in order to get things out of the way. Being able to play a Lust for Battle to absorb your breaker, and then be able to kick it out with Forcing Surrender is a cute little tech that we have available to us. It's not going to come up super often, but being able to do it can make the difference between a winning and losing turn. Next, we have 4 copies of One Man Inferno. I don't need to say much about this card. This is a card that has a mill cost on a spam. It helps us out get further into the deck in order to make sure that we are getting every bit of juice out of this deck that we can. So putting on all the gas and making sure that our rival has no breaks for us. And then last, but most certainly not least, 4 copies of Keen Observation. Keen Observation is one of those cards that's going to synergize relatively weakly with the deck overall, but it synergizes really well with Fiery Vengeance, being able to cause our rival to lose additional health after we burn them from them fully blocking. It's a way that we can punish things a little bit further, but mostly it's here because it's a 0 with a 2+ high block. Keeps us alive. Really helps out in that way. And that is the deck as a whole. Let's take a look at it block zone by block zone so you can kind of get an idea of how well this plays defensively. And there you have it. Here is the deck laid out by block zone. We have 17 highs, 21 mids, 12 lows, but it gets the job done. We're not concerned with playing super great defense. We're concerned with putting the heat on our rival and making sure their goose is cooked before we get to that point where defense matters. It's a very strong deck. It plays really well. It doesn't really have a whole lot of problems with its lines. You're able to take any number of attacks that are in your hand, jam them out, and really make your rival sweat the entire time as you turn up the heat and make sure that they cannot survive the one-man inferno. I hope you all enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with any changes that you might make or anything that you have observation-wise as far as Endeavor goes. I'd love to hear your feedback, and you have a fantastic day. Until the next time, just watch me.